All right, hello everybody, this is Antonio Wolf, continuing Voyage To Arcturus. We're on Chapter 6, Joywind. It was dense night when Maskell awoke from his profound sleep. A wind was blowing against him, gentle but wall-like, such as he had never experienced on Earth. He remained sprawling on the ground as he was unable to lift his body because of its intense weight. A numbing pain, which he could not identify with any region of his frame, acted from now onward as a lower, sympathetic note to all his other sensations. It gnawed away at him continuously. Sometimes it embittered and irritated him. At other times, he forgot it. So that pain is a pain that Crag gave him when he cut him. A wind blowing, gentle but wall-like. I can only consider that as the air is thick, dense in a way that we don't know or have not known on this planet for a long time. I mean, if Steiner's right, Steiner says that during the time of Atlantis, which was God knows when, could be anywhere from like 200,000 years ago to like millions of years ago, who knows. The atmosphere was thicker. Now, that's actually, I think, a scientific fact. The atmosphere was thicker at some point, and I mean like really thick compared to like now. But that's neither here nor there. He felt something hard on his forehead. Putting his hand up, he discovered there a fleshy protuberance the size of a small plum, having a cavity in the middle, of which he could not feel the bottom. Then he also became aware of a large knob on each side of his neck, an inch below the ear. From the region of his heart, a tentacle had budded. It was as long as his arm, but thin, like whipcord, and soft and flexible. As soon as he thoroughly realized the significance of these new organs, his heart began to pump. Whatever might, or might not, be their use, they proved one thing, that he was in a new world. One part of the sky began to get lighter than the rest. Maskell cried out to his companions, but received no response. This frightened him. He went on shouting out at irregular intervals, equally alarmed at the silence and at the sound of his own voice. Finally, as no answering hail came, he thought it wiser not to make too much noise, and after that he lay quiet, waiting in cold blood for what might happen. In a short while he perceived dim shadows around him, but these were not his friends. A pale, milky vapor over the ground began to succeed the black night, while in the upper sky rosy tints appeared. On Earth, one would have said that day was breaking. This brightness went on imperceptibly, increasing for a very long time. So that's certainly interesting. If you ever try to watch the sunset or the dawn, it actually happens amazingly quickly. So the fact that he feels it's very slow is interesting. The fact, like you say, it mentions like on Earth we might say like this is like the dawn. Why this wouldn't be just an obvious distinction? Will actually be clarified later on. Actually, well, no, it can be clarified now. Well, there's two stars, and they're kind of at opposite parts of the world. But it's such that once the story gets going a little bit more. We're gonna find out. Well, actually, it's not like the case of like there's two stars, on opposite sides, and they're rotating in such a way that both stars end up shining on both sides. Rather, it's the case that a certain side of the planet is dominated by one star, a certain other side is dominated by another, and it's more like when if you've ever seen videos of the Antarctic, where the sun never really fully sets, or rather, so far as it sets like very closely below the horizon, and then it comes back up, so that they don't really cross paths in the visual field, at least the stars. But it's interesting also that it was a dense night, so not even stars in the sky where he's at. Which is fitting. I mean, he's going to some place that he knows nothing about. It's completely brand new. It's the vast unknown. Maskell then discovered that he was lying on sand. The color of the sand was scarlet. The obscure shadows he had seen were bushes with black stems and purple leaves. So far, nothing else was visible. The day surged up. It was too misty for direct sunshine, but before long the brilliance of the light was already greater than that of the midday sun on Earth. The heat, too, was intense, but Maskell welcomed it. It relieved his pain and diminished his sense of crushing weight. The wind had dropped with the rising of the sun. He now tried to get onto his feet, but succeeded only in kneeling. He was unable to see far. The mist had no more than partially dissolved, and all that he could distinguish was a narrow circle of red sand dotted with 10 or 20 bushes. Okay, so probably it's the mist that made the night so dark. Let's see, the heat too was intense, but Maskell welcomed it. It relieved his pain, diminished his sense of crushing weight. Probably tied to the form of consciousness that one has. We'll probably tie that in later to the main antagonist. So red sand also, very interesting, and had the story ends somewhere that's completely opposite. He felt a soft, cool touch on the back of his neck. He started forward in nervous fright and, in doing so, tumbled over onto the sand, looking up over his shoulder quickly. He was astounded to see a woman standing beside him. She was clothed in a single flowing, pale green garment, rather classically draped. According to Earth standards, she was not beautiful, for although her face was otherwise human, she was endowed or afflicted with the additional disfiguring organs that Maskell had discovered in himself. She also possessed the heart tentacle. But when he sat up and their eyes met and remained in sympathetic contact, he seemed to see right into a soul that was the home of love, warmth, kindness, tenderness, and intimacy. Such was the noble familiarity of that gaze that he thought he knew her. After that he recognized all the loveliness of her person. She was tall and slight. All her beautiful movements were as graceful as music. Her skin was not of a dead, opaque color like that of an earth beauty, but was opalescent. Its hue was continually changing with every thought and emotion, but none of these tints was vivid. All were delicate, half-toned, and poetic. She had very long, loosely plaited, flaxen hair. The new organs, as soon as Maskell had familiarized himself with them, imparted something to her face that was unique and striking. He could not quite define it to himself, but subtlety and inwardness seemed added. The organs did not contradict the love of her eyes or the angelic purity of her features, but nevertheless sounded a deeper note, a note that saved her from mere girlishness. So they'll explain really quickly what those organs do. She was clothed in a single flowing, pale green garment, rather classically draped. It's interesting. Single piece. Immediacy of nature in an aesthetic form. Green. In the beginnings of sprouting of his journey. It's also nature-based. It's interesting that, the first thing he notes is, well, she's not beautiful by Earth standards, but it's mainly because of, the weird organs. Doesn't really go on about like, oh, she has some kind of disfigured face or anything. But it's kind of one of those things of, yeah, you may have like everything else fine, but you have like these blemishes, or at least what seem blemishes. It was mentioned earlier that he tried to poke into the center of the little thing that he has on his head, on his forehead. And he could not reach a bottom, which either that thing is long or that's pretty weird. I mean, it's already weird enough, but imagine like sticking your finger right. Yeah, that even if that was like, slightly raised above your head, you'd basically be poking your brain. But if you couldn't reach a bottom and he wasn't poking his brain, I assume that's a bit more of a horn kind of thing. But this world is weird, so. See, possessed the heart tentacle. See, their eyes met, remained in sympathetic contact. He seemed to see right into a soul that was the home of love, warmth, kindness, tenderness, and intimacy. All good things, very motherly, in fact. It's kind of a Mother Nature kind of theme. He says, she seems noble. Noble familiarity, that gaze. Tall and slight. Yeah, nobility, I guess, was with that kind of thing. Especially with females. All her movements were as graceful as music. Yep, her skin was not a dead, opaque color like that of an earth beauty, but was opalescent. Its hue was continually changing with every thought and emotion, but none of these tints was vivid. All were delicate, half-toned, and poetic. Very much in line with a lot of the classical views of femininity. That femininity is very, at least in its noble aspect, is a graceful, controlled emotionality and feeling. It is the fact that her feelings show throughout her skin as these shifting colors, but they're not bright like raging passions, but they're very delicate, half-toned, poetic. Very long, loosely plaited, flaxen hair. I don't know, when I think of that, I think something like dreads.
Yeah, maybe. Like long, slightly braided. Not like in a braid, but like loosely braided.
Yeah.
Yellow hair.
So let's see. Then the organs, masculine familiarity was imparted something in her face which was unique and striking. He could not quite define it to himself, but subtlety and inwardness seemed added. These organs did not contradict the love of her eyes or the angelic purity of her features, but nevertheless sounded a deeper note, a note that saved her from mere girlishness. Sound metaphors, music metaphors. Always something he was interested in. The subtlety of inwardness added by these things. Well, right now they're going to tell us what the organs do, and you'll see why. Her gaze was so friendly and unembarrassed that Maskell felt scarcely any humiliation at sitting at her feet, naked and helpless. She realized his plight and put into his hands a garment that she had been carrying over her arm. It was similar to the one she was wearing, but of a darker, more masculine color. "Do you think you can put it on by yourself?" He was distinctly conscious of these words, yet her voice had not sounded. He forced himself up to his feet, and she helped him to master the complications of the drapery. "Poor man, how you are suffering," she said, in the same inaudible language. This time he discovered that the sense of what she said was received by his brain through the organ on his forehead. "Where am I? Is this torments?" he asked. As he spoke, he staggered. She caught him and helped him to sit down. "Yes, You are with friends." Then she regarded him with a smile and began speaking aloud, in English. Her voice somehow reminded him of an April day. It was so fresh, nervous, and girlish. "I can now understand your language. It was strange at first. In the future, I'll speak to you with my mouth." "This is extraordinary. What is this organ?" he asked, touching his forehead. "It is named the Breve. By means of it we read one another's thoughts. Still, speech is better, for then the heart can be read too." He smiled. "They say that speech is given us to deceive others. One can deceive with thought too, but I'm thinking of the best, not the worst. Have you seen my friends?" She scrutinized him quietly before answering. "Did you not come alone?" "I came with 2 other men, in a machine. I must have lost consciousness on arrival, and I haven't seen them since." "That's very strange. No, I haven't seen them. They can't be here, or we would have known it. My husband and I—" "What is your name, and your husband's name?" "Mine is Joywind. My husband's is Panaw. We live a very long way from here. Still, it came to us both last night that you were lying here insensible. We almost quarreled about which of us should come to you, but in the end I won." Here she laughed. "I won, because I am the stronger-hearted of the 2. He is the purer in perception." "Thanks, Joywind," said Maskell simply. Okay, let's see. So the thing on his head, little kind of donut-looking thing, like with a hole in the middle. Used for telepathy, basically. For those of you who don't know, if you haven't heard it, I rarely mention it, but when I do, I always mention it. Telepathy involves no words, neither externally spoken nor internally spoken. It is the way you understand of when you just simply understand something without ever having words tied to it. Just as you understand, that you feel pain or pleasure or whatever, intuitively, just immediately the feeling is there, you immediately know what it is. Likewise, telepathy works in a non-verbal way in which you intuit, you feel the meaning immediately. And I'm not saying this from experience. It'd be cool if I had that experience, but it is from the experience of other people who report having such things happen. So the organ, Breve. He chooses the names very carefully, but I've never looked into whether there's anything to that.
It's a musical note. Of course.
By means of it we read one another's thoughts. Still, speech is better, for then the heart can be read too. What is that? Like, is it a music note that has any specific function?
Yeah.
Would its function have anything to do analogically with what this is? Like, telepathy?
No. Well, I don't think so.
It could also be short for brevity.
Yeah, that's where I get it. Yeah, that's what I think of. What I get out of it, I mean. Not where I get it.
And brevity would go together with it, yeah. So it's more brevity to communicate telepathically than it is to speak, out loud. No, yeah, that must be it. That makes perfect sense. So still speech is better, for then the heart can be read too. I actually never thought about that. What can be
When you,
done in telepathy that can't be done in speech? I have, but what can be done in speech that can't be done in telepathy? I haven't. But then again, no, not really. Because like what you can do in speech is like you can place emphasis, the tonality, all these things. But in
yes,
telepathy, you don't have to do that because the entire intent is carried in the message. So it's not simply a verbal thing. It's a conceptual thing. So
yes,
whatever you might conceive to add in the mode of like the sound of speech will be carried into the concept of what you communicate in telepathy.
right.
So in
But
telepathy, you can still lie.
yeah, you can. But in speech, there's intonation and vibration. Is that what she's talking about? The heart can be
Yeah, like that's what I. But that would be
vibrational.
carried.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, if you take it that like the physical aspect of it has something more that it adds, because the spiritual vibration is still carried on in telepathy, like the same kind of like intense and tones, but now it's just a pure intuition rather than a sensuous intuition.
Yeah,
So
but
speech is better.
telepathy can be misunderstood too, just as much as like s- speaking through
Yeah,
text. Think about it through like if you read a text and you misinterpret the intention, but you can't really do that when someone's speaking. Like you can't be like, oh, they're speaking angrily if they sound happy or whatever.
yeah, it depends. So if like telepathy is just merely like this straight indifferent communication, then yes.
Yeah,
But if not, like if like the whole conceptual content is carried into it, then no.
yeah. Which is never elaborated here, which is meant.
Yeah. So let's see. He smiled. They say that speech is given us to deceive others. Uh, that seems like a very Gnostic thing. Yeah, it probably is a very Gnostic thing. Never heard that. I mean, I've heard that this is something you can do, but it's not why we are given it. But if you're a Gnostic, anything external is evil, and the fact that speech is an externalization necessarily uh, provides that disconnect, which allows for evil to happen.
Yeah, you can evade people by, you know, changing their mood through speech. You can do that with telepathy too, but through speech, it might be more devastating.
See, one can
Because if
deceive
somebody
with
wants to
thought
say
too.
something, right? Somebody wants to say something, you can't not hear it, or at least you can't not experience it. A loud noise or whatever.
Yep.
Did you explain Pana and Joywind?
We haven't gotten there yet. So let's see.
They
She says
mentioned
one
their
can deceive
names.
with thought too. Uh,
Oh, are you rereading?
no, I'm just looking at this. So she says the speech can be given
Mhm.
to deceive others. One can deceive with thought too. That's, says Joywind. But I'm thinking of the best, not the worst. That is true. Like I said, in telepathy, you can still lie to people. So let's see. So no sign of Crag or Night Spore. Then she mentions, okay, she's Joywind. Uh, Fitting name. So she seems to be a very lovely and loving person. Uh, she kind of came to him just like the wind. Uh, and she's, well, like very quickly we're going to find out, like, she does things that are kind of like a second wind for him. Right now he can barely stand up. It's too heavy. It's difficult to breathe. It's difficult to understand a lot of things. She's going to do something like very shortly that it's going to basically give him the capacity to operate normally in torments. So Joywind's pretty simple name. Panaw is pan and awe put together. Pan being universal, everything, and awe, well, like being awestruck. So if Joywind brings joy and gives people second winds, Panaw is in awe of everything. So interestingly, they lived very long from there. The prior night, they both somehow knew that he was there and exactly where he was. Well, I mean, when you're telepathic, you have psychic powers. That's not amazing. It's pretty normal.
And sense your surroundings pretty easily.
We almost quarreled about which of us should come to you, but in the end, I won. I won because I am the stronger heart of the two. He is the purer in perception. So the masculine-feminine dichotomy, the feminine is more towards the side of feeling. She has the stronger feelings. The masculine is more towards the understanding. He has the pure perception. So he says, "Thanks, Joywind," said Maskell simply. The colors chased each other rapidly beneath her skin. "Oh, why do you say that? What pleasure is greater than loving kindness? I rejoiced at the opportunity, but now we must exchange blood." "What is this?" he demanded, rather puzzled. "It must be so. Your blood is far too thick and heavy for our world. Until you have an infusion of mine, you will never get up." Maskell flushed. "I feel like a complete ignoramus here. Won't it hurt you?" "If your blood pains you, I suppose it will pain me. But we will share the pain." "This is a new kind of hospitality to me," he muttered. "Wouldn't you do the same for me?" asked Joywind, half smiling, half agitated. "I can't answer for any of my actions in this world. I scarcely know where I am." "Why, yes, of course I would, Joywind." While they were talking, it had become full day. The mist had rolled away from the ground, and only the upper atmosphere remained fog-charged. A desert of scarlet sand stretched in all directions except one, where there was a sort of little oasis. Some low hills, clothed sparsely with little purple trees from base to summit. It was about a quarter of a mile distant. Joywind had brought with her a small flint knife. Without any trace of nervousness, she made a careful, deep incision on her upper arm. Maskell expostulated. "Really, this part of it is nothing," she said, laughing. "And if it were, a sacrifice that is no sacrifice, what merit is there in that? Come now, your arm." The blood was streaming down her arm. It was not red blood, but a milky, opalescent fluid. "Not that one," said Maskell, shrinking. "I have already been cut there." He submitted the other, and his blood poured forth. Joywind delicately and skillfully placed the mouths of the two wounds together, and then kept her arm pressed tightly against Maskell's for a long time. He felt a stream of pleasure entering his body through the incision. His old lightness and vigor began to return to him. After about 5 minutes, a duel of kindness started between them. He wanted to remove his arm, and she to continue. At last he had his way, but it was none too soon. She stood there pale and dispirited. She looked at him with a more serious expression than before, as if strange depths had opened up before her eyes. "What is your name?" "Maskell." "Where have you come from, with this awful blood?" "From a world called Earth. The blood is clearly unsuitable for this world, Joywind, but after all, that was only to be expected. I am sorry I let you have your way." "Oh, don't say that. There was nothing else to be done. We must all help one another. Yet, somehow..." Forgive me. I feel polluted. And well you may, for it's a fearful thing for a girl to accept in her own veins the blood of a strange man from a strange planet. If I had not been so dazed and weak, I would never have allowed it. But I would have insisted. Are we not all brothers and sisters? Why did you come here, Maskell? He was conscious of a slight degree of embarrassment. Will you think it foolish if I say I hardly know? I came with those two men. Perhaps I was attracted by curiosity, or perhaps it was the love of adventure. Perhaps, said Joyman. I wonder, these friends of yours must be terrible men. Why did they come? That I can tell you. They came to follow Surtur. Her face grew troubled. I don't understand it. One of them at least must be a bad man, and yet if he is following Surtur, or shaping, as he is called here, he can't be really bad. What do you know of Surtur? Asked Maskell in astonishment. Joywind remained Joywind remained silent for a time, studying his face. His brain moved restlessly, as though it were being probed from outside. I see, and yet I don't see, she said at last. It is very difficult. Your God is a dreadful being, bodiless, unfriendly, invisible. Here we don't worship a God like that. Tell me, has any man set eyes on your God? What does all this mean, Joywind? Why speak of God? I want to know. In ancient times, when the earth was young and grand, a few holy men are reputed to have walked and spoken with God. But those days are past. Our world is still young, said Joywind. Shaping goes among us and converses with us. He is real and active, a friend and lover. Shaping made us, and he loves his work. Have you met him? Demanded Maskell, hardly believing his ears. No, I have done nothing but to deserve it yet. Some day I may have an opportunity to sacrifice myself, and then I may be rewarded by meeting and talking with Shaping. I have certainly come to another world. But why do you say he is the same as Surtur? Yes, he is the same. We women call him Shaping, and so do most men, but a few name him Surtur. Maskell bit his nail. Have you ever heard of crystal men? That is Shaping once again. You see, he has many names, which shows how much he occupies our minds. Crystalman is a name of affection. It's odd, said Maskell. I came here with quite different ideas about crystalmen. Joywind shook her hair. In that grove of trees over there stands a desert shrine of his. Let us go and pray there, and then we'll go on our way to Pullingdread. That is my home. It is a long way off, and we must get there before Bloodsumber. Now, what is Bloodsumber? For about 4 hours in the middle of the day, Branchspell's rays are so hot that no one can endure them. We call it Bloodsomber. Is Branchspell another name for Arcturus? Joywind threw off her seriousness and laughed. Naturally, we don't take our names from you, Maskell. I don't think our names are very poetic, but they follow nature. Love it when books just tell you how to interpret them, but people still don't get it. Anyway, let's go back a little bit because that was quite an interesting stuff.
Yeah. Stretch.
So the brief, James Joywind. Okay, the blood thing. Well, that's very clear. Already talked about last chapter how this has to do with the density and gross materiality of us, and how the place he's at is of a far more refined spiritual nature, so that we are too heavy to operate in it. So he needs to get rid of his earth blood.
They're less dense.
Yeah, they're less dense. Less solid as well, which is why in the spiritual, you can do a lot of things and bend things in a lot of ways that you can't with physicality as we know it. So let's see. They share blood. He gets cut on the other arm than the one that
Where Crag cut him.
Crack cut him. I think that's interesting. I mean, he does it like on the reaction. He's like, "Well, shit, that hurts already like hell. Like, I don't want it to hurt anymore." But I think like as the story goes on, it'll be interesting in that like why these are two cuts. Not only that, so when Crag cut him, it was an immediate shock of pain that almost made him like knock out. When she cuts him and then shares her blood, he feels pleasure. He felt a stream of pleasure entering his body through the incision. His blood is red. Her blood is milky white, opalescent. Which is interesting. He has distinctions of different aspects of his body, whereas her inner and her outer are basically the same.
Yep.
She's a very immediate being. Which is also generally the case with spiritual things, depending on what level of spirituality and what kind of beings you're dealing with. A lot of beings are quite simple, like, even though like they're spiritual, they're not very complex. Just as like there's a matter of physical complexity, there's also a matter of spiritual complexity. Joy Wint seems to have a very singular kind of character. And then her body's of a very singular kind as well. Very interesting. Let's see. After about 5 minutes, a duel of kindness started between them. I think like it becomes obvious. Like the fact that she gave him her blood. Also means that her nature has entered into him. So not only does he feel pleasure, which, she clearly seems to enjoy being alive and seems to like everything else around her. He also will start liking the world a bit more and the things around him a bit more. She says, his blood is awful, which, I mean, compared to if you live in a nice paradisiacal, is that how you say it?
Paradisical.
Paradisical existence. Somebody who's not from paradise, but is rather fallen compared to it, having to take on their blood and therefore some of their nature and their feelings. Yeah, certainly awful.
Yeah, imagine if somebody put a thicker liquid in our body instead of our blood.
So she says,
feel heavier.
She feels
and be
polluted.
Like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah, but like beyond
Polluted.
that, she says, she feels polluted, and that's in a spiritual sense, not just a physical sense.
Yeah.
So, and well, you may, for it's a fearful thing for a girl to accept in her own veins the blood of a strange man from a strange planet. If I had not been so dazed and weak, I would never have allowed it. I think here he's misinterpreting what she's saying. Because, I mean, sure, that's just... One would say that's weird. But, like, polluted in the spiritual sense? No. Let's see. She asks him why he's here, and he says, I don't know. Maybe just curiosity, maybe adventure. Which is indeed what basically happened. He was just curious, no particular reason. Curiosity kills the cat, and he was told that he would die, and he was like, fuck it. her saying, "These friends of yours must be terrible men. Why did they come?" Now, I don't know why she says this at this point, what she could be like getting from it. Her face grew troubled. "I don't understand it. One of them at least must be a bad man, and yet if he is falling surtur, or shaping as he's called here, he can't really be bad." Okay. Yeah, she's already read his mind, that's why.
Mm-hmm.
So she knows about she knows about Nightspore and Craig.
Craig. Yeah.
One of them must be a bad man. It has to be Craig she's referring to. Yeah, sure. Why would Nightspore be considered to be a terrible man? He's a terrible friend. Doesn't do anything for you.
Yeah.
Comes along with you to another world, supposedly to accompany you. We wake up and you're alone. Great friend. So he tells them that, they were falling surtur, and then the whole thing about God comes in. So she remained silent for a time, studying his face. His brain moved restlessly as though it were being probed from outside. "I see, and yet I don't see. It is very difficult. Your God is a dreadful being, bodiless, unfriendly, invisible. Here we don't worship a God like that. Tell me, has any man seen eyes on your God?" So she knows the name Surtur, and Surtur is one of the names of the god of her world. So that's why she starts talking about God. And he's like, "Wait, why are you talking about God? He's mentioned Surtur." The phrase, "In ancient times when the earth was young and grand, a few holy men are reputed to have walked and spoken with God, but those days are past." That is an interesting thing. Yeah. These are like the Enochs and the Buddhas and like the people who like found religions very, very early on. And that is an interesting like thing. This is generally something talked about in esoteric and occult views. That somewhere in the past, this reality of ours was less dense, which is why the divine was far more apparent than it is now. I love this shit, so gotta mention it. So, according to Steiner, for example, in Atlantis, and according to even Casey, the world was less dense. It was less solid and more malleable. And this was not only just a physical expression of spirituality, the spiritual nature was also itself more fluid, which allowed for like stuff that we would now just call psychic powers to more easily be presented in the physical world, and to be manifest within individual thinking or like conscious beings. So that back then, why is it that, people could have something like clairvoyance or whatever? Well, because the world was not only softer in a physical sense, it was more receptive to the penetration of spirit. And as the world keeps concretizing and getting harder, more ossified, spirit likewise becomes less mobile and less capable of penetration, both in the material realm, but also in the spiritual realm, so that, it's like having a lead wall. Your body becomes like a lead wall for the signal of your spirit, and the general spirit of God. So it's an interesting connection between external solidity and internal ossification as opposed to fluidity. So she says, "When our world is still young, shaping goes amongst us and converses with us. He is real and active, a friend and lover. Shaping made us, and he loves his work." So it seems like a good guy. Well, not a good guy, but a good person. Whatever one may call like the gender of God. So let's see. "She has not deserved to meet her God yet. Someday I may have an opportunity to sacrifice myself, and then I may be rewarded by meeting and talking with Shaping." So it's interesting. One of the highest things that she can conceive of doing is to just sacrifice herself for something. And it's already been established she's kind of this very loving person. Very altruistic. Crystalman. That is shaping once again. You see he has many names, which shows how much he occupies our minds. Crystalman is a name of affection. Which, of course, given the way Crag has talked about it, it is not affectionate at all. You know, Crag says it with disdain. So let's see. Blood Somber. 4 hours about in the middle of the day. Branch spells rays are so hot that no one can endure them. We call it Blood Somber. Oh, blood. Pretty clear. Somber. What is the specific definition of somber? Somber, dark or dull in color or tone, gloomy, oppressive, sullen, or sober in mood. Grave. Okay. So, a heavy mood, oppressive, because it's not a very positive thing. So hot that no one can endure them. It's like the point where one's existence becomes too heavy in certain ways or too intense to bear in a bad way. And the name of the sun, the name of Arcturus, branch spell. The other star, if you remember, it's 2 stars. One's Arcturus, and there's a little blue sun also there. The little blue sun is all pain. I think it's Alpain, which all and pain. Yeah. But branch spell. It's a very odd name. At the same time, daybreak. It is the main sun that is going to be in this story up until the very end. We don't get to see all pain until the very end. All pain belongs particularly as the son of crystal men or shaping. Branch spell is going to be tied, well, it's going to come up soon, but it's not much of a spoiler, okay? Crag is a special somebody. If Crystalman is some kind of like deity in this world, Crag is also a deity too. And the world is dual. Branch spell seems to belong to the domain of whatever Crag represents or embodies. It is fire. It is painful. Nobody likes branch spell. It's not a comfortable thing, even like at its comfortable level. It is uncomfortable. But at the same time, because it is in this world, which is not, we have already been kind of given hints that whatever this world is, it's not a good place. The only thing I can think about why it's called branch spell is the day sunlight gives you a way to navigate. It seems good. Right? Like there's no general way in which people would think like, oh, sunlight is bad. And at the same time, like a limited vision is blinding, just like limited knowledge is blinding and bad in a certain way. The limited vision that branch spell provides as a physical vision is something that keeps you trapped in this kind of place, rather than like seeing the truth. But just with Emily the Crag, like there's something painful about branch spell. It is something that it's supposed to be illusory, and yet at the same time, within the illusion, the truth is breaking in. But the truth within an illusion to somebody who is deluded appears as pain. So I think like it's called branch spell, both in the sense of kind of like it's a spell, like a magic spell, a magic wand kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a branch in the way that it's a way in which the divine is reaching out into this world, limited as it may be. It's also a spell in that it's like it's a spell, a momentary thing.
Yes. Like the phrase, let me sit for a spell.
Yep. So that's my thoughts on what's the meaning of that name.
Yeah, I think they have, if they have 24-hour days as we do, then, those 4 hours, it would be at its peak in the middle of the day, so it would be at its brightest. So that's why no one could endure it.
Yeah. Which would also go with it, that if this world, like I said, it is a false world in some sense, because it has Gnostic biases of sorts. If there was something with a hint of truth at its peak in this world, if branch spell is such a thing, it makes sense that it's at its peak brightness. It would also be at the point at which it would reveal intuitively through its effects the peak truth of this world, which is that this world is really, in truth, painful rather than pleasant, and that is its truth. So, anyways, and their names follow the nature. So one may think this is uncreative because it's like, because when people do this now, it just feels odd. At the same time, this is the origin of names to begin with. You were named after a nature. And if you look at any ancient mythology, literature, whatever we have that's left of it, that's how all names work. Chronos literally just is the word for time. All the gods are named as literally what they do. They're the nature of what they are and what they do.
Yeah. In Genesis, Jacob means like kind of deceiver or something, and then he changes his name to Israel, so he changes his name along with his nature.
Yep. It's only until the last... Yeah, it's probably, I think, only about the last thousands or so years where people have names from other languages so that they don't know that these are themselves words.
Yeah. I can't really imagine anybody would be, but anyone who's a fan of Harry Potter, all of their names, when I watched those films, every name has a very unclever, I would say, non-clever meaning for what everyone is in the entire story. Laughably so.
Oh yeah.
It's a bit more clever here.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a bad guy named Malfoy, I don't know who
Yeah.
you're trying to trick.
Yeah. So if you don't know, Mal means bad, and Foy means faith. So he's a bad faith actor.
Yep.
Hagrid means hag-ridden, you know. And his first name is Rubius, meaning red. There's the red, hag-ridden, worried person. He's always, worried about something.
Yep.
It's a bit more clever here. Oh, did we go over Pooling Dread? Or are you saving that?
Oh yeah, that's where they live. And a obvious name, despite the fact that it does. When we get there, you're like, what the fuck is dreadful about this? It's one of those things in which like until the story continues and we find out what this world is, that name won't make much sense. But we can also, just from the name, you can go like, okay, pooling dread. This is somewhere like dread is somehow pooling. Like, how is that? Well, keep it in mind, and you'll find out more and more as the story goes on.
Yeah.
She says, I don't think our names are very poetic, but they follow nature. She took his arm affectionately and directed their walk towards the tree-covered hills. As they went along, the sun broke through the upper mist, and a terrible gust of scorching heat, like a blast from a furnace, struck Maskell's head. He involuntarily looked up, but lowered his eyes again like lightning. All that he saw in that instant was a glaring ball of electric white, 3 times the apparent diameter of the sun. For a few minutes, he was quite blind. My God, he exclaimed. If it's like this in early morning, you must be right enough about Blood Somber. When he had somewhat recovered himself, he asked, How long are the days here, Joywind? Again he felt his brain being probed. At this time of the year, for every hour's daylight that you have in summer, we have 2. So, 48-hour total day, I suppose. 24-hour daylight. Fucking brutal. The heat is terrific, and yet somehow I don't feel so distressed by it as I would have expected. I feel it more than usual. It's not difficult to account for it. You have some of my blood, and I have some of yours. Yes, every time I realize that, Tell me, Joywind, will my blood alter if I stay here long enough? I mean, will it lose its redness and thickness, and become pure and thin and light-colored like yours? Why not? If you live as we live, you will surely grow like us. Do you mean food and drink? We eat no food and drink only water. And on that you manage to sustain life? Well, Maskell, our water is good water, replied Joywind, smiling. As soon as he could see again, he stared around at the landscape. The enormous scarlet desert extended everywhere to the horizon, excepting where it was broken by the oasis. It was roofed by a cloudless, deep blue, almost violet sky. The circle of the horizon was far larger than on Earth. On the skyline, at right angles to the direction in which they were walking, appeared a chain of mountains, apparently about 40 miles distant. One, which was higher than the rest, was shaped like a cup. Maskell would have felt inclined to believe he was traveling in dreamland, but for the intensity of the light, which made everything vividly real. So a chain of mountains 40 miles away. One of the higher ones was shaped like a cup. Cups where things pool. That's where she lives. Joey Winder pointed to the cup-shaped mountain. That's Pooling Dread. You didn't come from there, he exclaimed, quite startled. Yes, I did indeed. And that is where we have to go now. With a single object of finding me? Why, yes. The color mounted to his face. Then you are the bravest and noblest of all girls, he said quietly, after a pause. Without exception. Why, this is a journey for an athlete. She pressed his arm while a score of unpaintable, delicate hues stained her cheeks in rapid transition. Please don't say any more about it, Maskell. It makes me feel unpleasant. Very well. But can we possibly get there before midday? Oh, yes. And you must be frightened at the distance. We think nothing of long distances here. We have so much to think about and feel. Time goes all too quickly. Let's see. 40 miles away. And they're going to get there before midday. And a total amount of daylight is about 24 hours. Yeah. So in 12 hours, they're going to walk 40 miles. Well, how fast does a person walk, really? I don't actually know. It's maybe 5 miles an hour? They got at a comfortable pace. No, yeah, okay, yeah, they can make it.
Yeah. We can only see about 40 miles away.
Oh, yeah, this planet is huge.
Yeah.
Not only is, the sun huge, everything else is more huge. There's a point in the story where he's just standing at, one of the highest, not mountains, but it's a very high elevated plateau. And it describes how, the way that the horizon looks, how you can sort of get the feeling of the dome shape of the sky. He describes it as being just magnitudes more vast than the Earth's sky. So during their conversation, they had drawn near the base of the hills, which sloped gently and were not above 50 feet in height. Maskell now began to see strange specimens of vegetable life. What looked like a small patch of purple grass above 5 feet square was moving across the sand in their direction. When it came near enough, he perceived that it was not grass. There were no blades, but only purple roots. The roots were revolving, for each small plant in the whole patch like the spokes of a rimless wheel. They were alternately plunged in the sand and withdrawn from it, and by this means the plant proceeded forward. Some uncanny, semi-intelligent instinct was keeping all the plants together, moving at one pace, in one direction, like a flock of migrating birds in flight. Another remarkable plant was a large feathery ball resembling a dandelion fruit, which they encountered sailing through the air. Joan caught it with an exceedingly graceful movement of her arm and showed it to Maskell. It had roots and presumably lived in the air and fed on the chemical constituents of the atmosphere. But what was peculiar about it was its color. It was an entirely new color, not a new shade or combination, but a new primary color, as vivid as blue, red, or yellow, but quite different. When he inquired, she told him that it was known as oil fire. Presently, he met with a second new color. This she designated jail. The sense impressions caused in Maskell by these two additional primary colors can only be vaguely hinted at by analogy. Just as blue is delicate and mysterious, yellow clear and unsubtle, and red sanguine and passionate, so he felt oil fire to be wild and painful, and jail dreamlike, feverish, and voluptuous. I don't know how else you could ever like impart a sense of like new colors other than this. This is like the most
Yeah.
the most masterful form I have ever seen of somebody try this. Because even though you just can't see it, it's impossible. But you do get a sense, okay, like just as these colors do cause certain intuitions in me, certain feelings, these colors have this other added layer. And you can somewhat sort of imagine that. The hills were composed of a rich, dark mold, small trees of weird shapes, all differing from each other, but all purple colored, covered the slopes and top. Maskell and Joywind climbed up and through. Some hard fruit, bright blue in color, of the size of a large apple, and shaped like an egg, was lying in profusion underneath the trees. Is the fruit here poisonous, or why don't you eat it? Asked Maskell. She looked at him tranquilly. We don't eat living things. The thought is horrible to us. I have nothing to say against that, theoretically, but do you really sustain your bodies on water? Supposing you could find nothing else to live on, Maskell, would you eat other men? I would not. Neither will we eat plants and animals, which are our fellow creatures. So nothing is left to us but water, and as one can really live on anything, water does very well. That's interesting. As one can really live on anything, water does very well. I suppose that kind of goes with certain spiritual views. Particularly, you hear this stuff like in Indian stuff. What is it? Is it prana? Don't take my word on this. Look it up. There are yogis who have historically claimed that they can just live by, intaking the energy of the universe. I think it's called prana or something. So they claim like they don't eat anything, because everything is energy. So like, why not just go for the pure thing? This being a more spiritual world, more subtle in materiality than ours, that would make sense that beings there would kind of just, if they wanted to, or were willing to become adept at it, could just live by osmosing the energy of the environment. And if you don't do that, well, you might as well just take something else. There's a character later on that just eats sand. Just eats dirt. So Maskell picked up one of the fruits and handled it curiously. As he did so, another of his newly acquired sense organs came into action. He found the fleshy knobs beneath his ears were in some novel fashion acquainting him with the inward properties of the fruit. He could not only see, feel, and smell it, but could detect its intrinsic nature. This nature was hard, persistent, and melancholy. If you ever take acid, this is something that you could experience. Not just acid, any psychedelic, it may lead you to have this experience. If you ever just have a natural mystical experience, you might have this experience. This is actually a very well-reported thing. It is a form of intellectual intuition. You see the thing, and just in seeing it, you know its nature, and you don't have to represent it to yourself in words or through a mediating representational concept. You just immediately know. And so, the fact that there's these little knob things on his neck, or is it, he found fleshy knobs beneath his ears. I can only like imagine like they're more like akin like what you see with like robots. They have like those knobs right on the side of their heads. They're basically receptors, you know. They receive signals and send signals, and that's what that does. So Joywood answered the questions he had not asked. Those organs are called poins. They're used to enable us to understand and sympathize with all living creatures. What advantage do you derive from that, Joywind? The advantage of not being cruel and selfish, dear Maskell. He threw the fruit away and flushed again. Poins.
Yeah, poin is
Like poignant?
yeah, like poignant, but poin is an old French word for hand. And it's where we get punch, go poin. It's where we get pugilistic. So it's related to the fist, the hand. So it's a, you touch it without touching it.
Yeah. See, archaic sense of poignant is sharp or pungent in taste or smell. Capacity of being able to determine.
Yeah, like pungent.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, so the I like that. It seems that she has a little bit of sass. The advantage of not being cruel and selfish, dear Maskell. Joywin looked into his swarthy, bearded face without embarrassment and slowly smiled. Have I said too much? Have I been too familiar? Do you know why you think so? It's because you are still impure. By and by, you will listen to all language without shame. Before he realized what she was about to do, she threw her tentacle around his neck like another arm. He offered no resistance to its cool pressure. The contact of her soft flesh with his own was so moist and sensitive that it resembled another kind of kiss. He saw who it was that embraced him, a pale, beautiful girl. Yet oddly enough, he experienced neither voluptuousness nor sexual pride. The love expressed by the caress was rich, glowing, and personal, but there was not the least trace of sex in it, and so he received it. She removed her tentacle, placed her 2 arms on his shoulders, and penetrated with her eyes right into his very soul. Yes, I wish to be pure, he muttered. Without that, what can I ever be but a weak, squirming devil? Joywind released him. This we call the Magan, she said, indicating her tentacle. By means of it, we love already. What we love already, we love more, and what we don't love at all, we begin to love. Magan as in magnanimity, I think.
Magnanimity.
Yeah, magnanimity. Yeah.
Palatable.
And the fact that it grows right from on top of where his heart is makes perfect sense. It's thin, it's flexible, all the things of, the softness of pure love, an innocent love. A godlike organ. It is the one we guard most jealously, said Joywind. The shade of the trees afforded a timely screen from the now almost insufferable rays of branch spell, which was climbing steadily upward to the zenith. On descending the other side of the little hills, Maskell looked anxiously for traces of Nightspore and Crag, but without result. After staring about him for a few minutes, he shrugged his shoulders, but suspicions had already begun to gather in his mind. Oh, a thing to note, because it's going to come up quite a good chunk of the story. He's being manipulated, and he doesn't even realize it. Takes him a long while to understand that when these things happen, that he's basically being possessed. She wraps her tentacle right along him. All of a sudden, he has a overcoming or overwhelming experience. Changes his mind, but there's no reflection upon that. Wait, what's going on? It's just he's overtaken by the experience, and it's just dragged along. She tells him, "Oh, you're impure. You still need lots to do." She does that thing. And he's like, "Oh, yes, I'm impure. I wish to be pure." Now, before that, he wasn't thinking about that. He wasn't talking about that. Which is something that is talked about in esoteric literature and occult stuff. When you encounter spiritual beings, you need to be very careful because an encounter with them is a necessary opening up to their influence, even as you don't realize that you are being overtaken by their influence. So Maskell looked anxiously for traces of Nightspore and Crag, without result. A small natural amphitheater lay at their feet, completely circled by the tree-clad heights. The center was of red sand. In the very middle shot up a tall, stately tree with a black trunk and branches and transparent crystal leaves. At the foot of this tree was a natural circular well containing dark green water. When they had reached the bottom, Joywind took him straight over to the well. Maskell gazed at it intently. "Is this the shrine you talked about?" "Yes, it is called Shaping's Well. The man or woman who wishes to invoke Shaping must take up some of the Null water and drink it." Null, as in gnosis or knowledge. "Pray for me," said Maskell. "Your unspotted prayer will carry more weight." "What do you wish for?" "For purity," answered Maskell in a troubled voice. Joywind made a cup of her hand and drank a little of the water. She held it up to Maskell's mouth. "You must drink too." He obeyed. She then stood erect, closed her eyes, and in a voice like the soft murmurings of spring, prayed aloud. "Shaping, my father, I am hoping you can hear me. A strange man has come to us weighed down with heavy blood. He wishes to be pure. Let him know the meaning of love. Let him live for others. Don't spare him pain, dear Shaping, but let him seek his own pain. Breathe into him a noble soul." Maskell listened with tears in his heart. That's an interesting thing to say. Don't spare him pain, but let him seek his own pain. Breathe into him a noble soul. Don't spare him pain, but let him seek. Interpreting it from a kind of person she is, she would seek her own pain over the pain of others. Just like how, she shared her blood with him. So she's not against pain. So that's the only thing that makes sense to me with that. The pain of, the pain of love, the pain of, sacrificing for another.
Yeah.
As Joywin finished speaking, a blurred mist came over his eyes, and, half buried in the scarlet sand, appeared a large circle of dazzlingly white pillars. For some minutes they flickered to and fro between distinctness and indistinctness, like an object being focused. Then they faded out of sight again. Is that a sign for shaping? Asked Maskell in a low, odd tone. Perhaps it is. It is a time mirage. What can that be, Joywind? You see, dear Maskell, the temple does not yet exist, but it will do so, because it must. What you and I are now doing in simplicity, wise men will do hereafter in full knowledge. It is right for man to pray, said Maskell. Good and evil in the world don't originate from nothing. God and devil must exist, and we should pray to the one and fight the other. Yes, we must fight Crag. What name did you say? Asked Maskell in amazement. Crag, the author of Evil and Misery, whom you call devil. He immediately concealed his thoughts. To prevent Joywin from learning his relationship to this being, he made his mind a blank. Why do you hide your mind from me? She demanded, looking at him strangely and changing color. In this bright, pure, radiant world, evil seems so remote, one can scarcely grasp its meaning. But he lied. Joywin continued gazing at him, straight out of her clean soul. The world is good and pure, but many men are corrupt. Panau, my husband, has traveled, and he has told me things I would almost rather not have heard. One person he met believed the universe to be, from top to bottom, a conjurer's cave. I should like to meet your husband. Well, we are going home now. Maskell was on the point of inquiring whether she had any children, but was afraid of offending her, and checked himself. She read the mental question. What need is there? Is not the whole world full of lovely children? Why should I want selfish possessions? Let's see, So, now we know Crag is considered the devil in this world. Very important. The author of Evil and Misery. So we don't quite know what evil means, but it has something to do with misery. And Crag has already showed us that he's got something to do with pain, whatever he is. But the pain that he has to do with seems to be a good kind of pain. So an extraordinary creature flew past, uttering a plaintive cry of 5 distinct notes. It was not a bird, but had a balloon-shaped body, paddled by 5 webbed feet. It disappeared among the trees. Joywin pointed to it as it went by. I love that beast, grotesque as it is, perhaps all the more for its grotesqueness. But if I had children of my own, would I still love it? Which is best, to love 2 or 3, or to love all? Every woman can't be like you, Joywind, but it is good to have a few like you. Wouldn't it be as well, he went on, since we've got to walk through that sun-baked wilderness, to make turbans for our heads out of some of those long leaves? She smiled rather pathetically. You will think me foolish, but every tearing off of a leaf would be a wound in my heart. We have only to throw our robes up our heads. No doubt that will answer the same purpose, but tell me, weren't these very robes once part of a living creature? Oh, no. They are the webs of a certain animal, but they had never been in themselves alive. You reduce life to extreme simplicity, remarked Maskell meditatively. but it is very beautiful. Climbing back over the hills, they now, without further ceremony, began their march across the desert. Let's see, how much more is there for this? Panos story. They walked side by side. Joywind directed the course straight toward Pooling Tread. From the position of the sun, Maskell judged their way to lie due north. The sand was soft and powdery, very tiring to his naked feet. The red glare dazed his eyes and made him semi-blind. He was hot, parched, and tormented with a craving to drink. His undertone of pain emerged into full consciousness. I see my friends nowhere, and it is very queer. Yes, it is queer, if it is accidental, said Joywind with a peculiar intonation. Exactly, agreed Maskell. If they had met with mishap, their bodies would still be there. It begins to look like a piece of bad work to me. They must have gone on and left me. Well, I am here, and I must make the best of it. I will trouble no more about them. I don't wish to speak ill of anyone, said Joywind, but my instinct tells me that you are better away from those men. They did not come here for your sake, but for their own. They walked on for a long time. Maskell was beginning to feel faint. She twined her Magan lovingly around his waist, and a strong current of confidence and well-being instantly coursed through his vein. Thanks, Joywind, but am I not weakening you? Yes, she replied with a quick, thrilling glance, but not much, and it gives me great happiness. Presently they met a fantastic little creature, the size of a newborn lamb, waltzing along on 3 legs. Each leg in turn moved to the front, and so the little monstrosity proceeded by means of a series of complete rotations. It was vividly colored, as though it had been dipped into pots of bright blue and yellow paint. It looked up with small, shining eyes as they passed. Joywind nodded and smiled to it. That's a personal friend of mine, Maskell. Whenever I come this way, I see it. It's always waltzing and always in a hurry, but it never seems to get anywhere. It seems to me that life is so self-sufficient here that there is no need for anyone to get anywhere. What I don't quite understand is how you manage to pass your days without ennui. That's a strange word. It means, does it not, craving for excitement? Something of the kind, said Maskell. That must be a disease brought on by rich food. But are you ever dull? How could we be? Our blood is quick and light and free. Our flesh is clean and unclogged, inside and out. Before long, I hope you will understand what sort of question you have asked. Farther on, they encountered a strange phenomenon. In the heart of the desert, a fountain rose perpendicularly 50 feet into the air with a cool and pleasant hissing sound. It differed, however, from a fountain in this respect, that the water of which it was composed did not return to the ground, but was absorbed by the atmosphere at the summit. It was, in fact, a tall, graceful column of dark green fluid with a capital of coiling and twisting vapors. So about the weirdness of this question, and she answers with, our blood is quick and light and free, and our flesh is clean and unclogged, inside and out. Why would this be a weird question? Well, why would you crave excitement? What is excitement for? Excitement is to bring you alive. And it only happens when you're feeling unalive. And why are you feeling unalive? Well, something is spiritually or physically clogging the flow of your life energy. You don't feel alive because, you don't feel energized. But if your systems are all well and working, you are alive and you are energized. What excitement would you crave? You're not craving excitement when you are already excited. She says that must be a disease brought on by rich food. And I could only guess that the reason for rich food is complex food. Complexity makes things more difficult. So only for a complex being would boredom or dullness be a problem that arises, mainly because there are many ways in which the process and feeling of life would be stopped or clogged in some way. Let's go over the fountain thing again. So, however, from a fountain in this respect, that the water of which it was composed did not return to the ground, but was absorbed by the atmosphere at the summit. It was in fact a tall, graceful column of dark green fluid with a capital of coiling and twisting vapors. When they came closer, Maskell perceived that this water column was the continuation and termination of a flowing brook, which came down from the direction of the mountains. The explanation of the phenomenon was evidently that the water at the spot found chemical affinities in the upper air, and consequently forsook the ground. Now let us drink, said Joywind. She threw herself unaffectedly at full length on the sand, face downward by the side of the brook, and Maskell was not long in following her example. She refused to quench her thirst until she had seen him drink. He found the water heavy, but bubbling with gas. He drank copiously. It affected his palate in a new way. With the purity and cleanness of water was combined the exhilaration of a sparkling wine, raising his spirits. But somehow the intoxication brought out his better nature, and not his lower. We call it gnaw water, said Joywind. This is not quite pure, as you can see by the color. At Pullingdread it is crystal clear, but we would be ungrateful if we complained. After this, you'll find we'll get along much better. So the good stuff is crystal clear because knowledge itself is crystal clear. Maskell now began to realize his environment, as it were for the first time. All his sense organs started to show him beauties and wonders that he had not hitherto suspected. The uniform glaring scarlet of the sands became separated into a score of clearly distinguished shades of red. The sky was similarly split into different blues. The radiant heat of branch spell he found to affect every part of his body with unequal intensities. His ears awakened, the atmosphere was full of murmurs, the sands hummed, and even the sun's rays had a sound of their own, a kind of faint Aeolian harp. Subtle, puzzling perfumes assailed his nostrils. His palate lingered over the memory of the gnaw water. All the pores of his skin were tickled and soothed by hitherto unperceived currents of air. His poins explored actively the inward nature of everything in his immediate vicinity. His Magan touched Joywind and drew from her person a stream of love and joy. And lastly, by means of his breve, he exchanged thoughts with her in silence. This mighty sense symphony stirred him to the depths, and throughout the walk of that endless morning he felt no more fatigue. When it was drawing near to Blodsumber, they approached the sedgy margin of a dark green lake which lay underneath Pullingdread. Panna was sitting on a dark rock, waiting for them. So definitely this is knowledge not only in the representational sense of like, oh yeah, I know fire needs some kind of fuel and, some kind of agent, catalyst to start the chemical process of burning and to maintain it. No, this is the kind of knowledge of like, I know that a tiger is dangerous and I feel the danger. It is an all-encompassing total knowledge. Yeah, which is what, they called gnosis back then. Back in the old Greek days, back when the Gnostics were around. I don't know, any comments on this chapter? Because otherwise we can leave it for next time.
Yeah, well, I think we covered everything so far. It's a good chapter.
Yep. Next chapter is certainly a bit more interesting. Anyways, see you around. See you for chapter 7.